Committee will come to order. We have 6 items on the agenda today, and before we turn, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that we're going to adjourn in an earlier fashion in honor of Senator Bob Dole, who will lie in state in the Capitol today and whose arrival ceremony takes place this morning. Senator Dole's war record is well known and so widely admired. The courage this man showed, the price he paid for his service to our country. I particularly remember, as a member of the House, his extraordinary leadership on the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the fact that I had a chance to work with him only one time when he returned after he left the Senate, but he returned to help in 2012 to pass the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, a treaty that protects the rights and dignity of individuals with disabilities, which in the Senate, unfortunately, was narrowly rejected. His legacy lives on in a more inclusive society that he fought to create, and America is better because of Bob Dole and his service to our country. With that, I'll turn to our agenda. 4 nominees have been listed for the first time. Will be held over: Bridget Brennan, Northern District of Ohio; Judge John Chun, Western District of Washington; Charles Fleming, Northern District of Ohio; and Judge David Ruiz, Northern District of Ohio as well. We also have 1 U.S. Attorney nominee on the agenda, Dawn Eisen, nominated to the Eastern District of Michigan. I understand we will be able to voice vote Ms. Eisen's nomination, which we'll do shortly. We have 1 bill on the agenda, S. 2614, Open Courts Act of 2021, the bill sponsored by Senators Portman and Wyden, myself, and Senator Hawley. It's known as the Free Pacer Bill. Presently, litigants in federal court and members of the public have to pay to get access to public federal court records, like filings and briefs, through the Public Access to Court Electronic Records, or the PACER system. Big law firms have no problem, but these fees may be too expensive for individuals, small businesses, small law firms, and nonprofits to track litigation that impacts them. And for some low-income individuals, the cost of assessing records can be so high that it may prevent them from going forward with a meritorious lawsuit. In addition, the PACER system is not keeping pace with reality and technology. Its search function is tortuous. There's no uniformity in filings from all 94 district courts and 13 appellate courts. It's time for us to do something. The Open Courts Act will require the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts to develop a modern, secure, publicly accessible, electronic-based filing system for all public court records. The AO is already working on it. Importantly, this bill would make it clear to the AO that PACER must be free to the public. Establishment of the new electronic system would be funded by a temporary, underline the word temporary, fee on certain high-volume PACER users, annual fees to be paid by each federal agency that relies on PACER. After the system is up and running, its operational costs will be funded primarily by annual agency fees and appropriations. We're trying to strike a balance that ensures there will be adequate resources for this effort while creating the correct incentives for efficiency and access. I'll offer a manager's amendment to adjust the funding mechanism, incorporate some technical edits suggested by the Administrative Office of the Court, and include other changes negotiated in a bipartisan manner. I believe this bill improves access to justice by eliminating the PACER paywall. It's important, and I hope the committee can move it forward. And before voting on the U.S. Attorney nominee and the bill, I want to recognize the ranking member if he wishes to make any remarks.
Yeah. I concur with what you said about Senator Dole. I gave a speech Monday afternoon on that, and I won't repeat that, but I had a long remarks about my working together with him for a long period of time. We will hold over the 4 judicial nominees. The U.S. Attorney can be voice voted. I'd like to speak briefly about the bill. Everyone who interacts with our federal court system is familiar with the PACER, the document system used by the federal courts. The main issue that this bill seeks is to address the fees charged for using PACER. PACER is nothing more than a federal court documents. They should be free to the general public. This bill will make PACER free for the general public and require it to be modernized. We thank, of course, Portman, Wyden for their lead. Also, Senator Durbin for working to refine the bill, and he worked well with us on that issue. And I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. I look forward to supporting this bill and making federal court records free and easily accessible to the public. And as we near the end of the year, I'd like to give a little update on Justice Department responding to our congressional oversight. I've written several dozen letters this year to the Justice Department. These letters not only address Justice Department misconduct, but they also seek records. Those letters include a bipartisan request with Durbin to DEA. That letter declared or related to DEA's oversight of foreign operations, Haiti. I've also written a bipartisan letter to the Bureau of Prisons with Chairman Durbin. I've sent 2 letters with Republican members to Garland and Ray about the publications of taxpayer information by ProPublica. I've asked about any investigations into the possible leak of hacks of that IRS data. The Justice Department and its components have failed to fully and completely respond to every letter I've written, and with the exception of one ATF matter, the Justice Department has failed to produce records that I've requested. As one easy example for the Justice Department, on January 19th, 2021, then President Trump issued a memorandum to the Attorney General, Director of National Intelligence, and the Director of Central Intelligence Agency. That memo directed them to declassify certain Crossfire hurricane records for the public dissemination. Since February this year, my staff and Senator Johnson's staff have requested an update from the Justice Department on what's been declassified. We're into December, and the Attorney General still has no answer. I've also asked the Department for records relating to Hunter Biden's October 2018 firearm incident, where his gun ended up in the trash can near a school. The ATF used the Freedom of Information Act to refuse production of these records when that law doesn't even apply to the Congress. Now, do you understand that the lawyers at ATF don't even want to follow the law? They don't even know what the law says. I've asked for information related to Chinese nationals linked to the Chinese communist regime that are connected to some members of the Biden family. One individual, Patrick Ho, was not just linked to the Chinese regime, he was apparently connected to its intelligence service. Hunter Biden reportedly represented him for $1 million, even though the department already made public in a court filing that it possesses FISA information related to Patrick Ho. In response to my oversight request, the department said this, quote, "Unfortunately, under the circumstances described in your letter, we're not in a position to confirm the existence of the information that is sought, if it exists, in the department's possession." Now, you understand, DOJ ought to be embarrassed by that response. Documents made public in the court system, and they do not even know whether the document exists. I've asked the Attorney General to explain himself on these 2 contradictory positions. He have no response. Moreover, on February the 3rd, 2021 and March the 9th, 2021, Senator Johnson and I wrote letters to the Attorney General with respect to Nicholas McQuaid, the then acting Assistant Attorney General for Criminal Division and current Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Criminal Division. Our letter raised concerns about the fact that Mr. McQuaid worked for Hunter Biden's criminal attorney until he was hired by the Biden administration on January the 20th. This poses a clear conflict. The Justice Department has failed to answer whether Mr. McQuaid is recused from this matter. Notably, on June the 29th, 2021, I sent the Attorney General Garland a letter that raised concerns about Susan Hennessy's political bias against the Durham investigation. That letter was based on negative public comments made about it. Ms. Hennessy works in the Justice Department National Security Division. My letter asks, in part, whether or not she recused herself from that matter. In response, Attorney General Garland refused to answer whether she has or had any involvement in the Durham investigation. However, on Senate Judiciary Committee October 27th hearing, that was oversight, Garland stated that Ms. Hennessy, quote, has nothing whatsoever to do with the Durham investigation, end of quote. Now, if Attorney General Garland has publicly stated that Ms. Hennessy has, quote, nothing whatsoever to do with Durham, then, end of quote, then why can't he say the same thing publicly about Mr. McQuaid and the Hunter Biden matter? I've also asked the Justice Department and FBI about its, quote, assessment, end of quote, of concerned women of America. Public records cause concern that the FBI targeted this group without sufficient basis. I've asked similar questions related to the Justice Department, FBI's heavy-handed conduct with respect to Project Veritas. No response on those counts. And you can go on, and that's the end of it for today. But we need answers to these questions. And I thank the chairman for a couple times saying that even the chairman hasn't got answers to his questions. So what do they respect of the executive branch about congressional oversight? I've heard Senator Whitehouse say exactly the same thing. So maybe all of you have that problem.
Mr. Chairman.
I yield.
Just one moment. I'll recognize you, Senator Kennedy. And first, thanks for clarifying the Durbin investigation. Secondly, I agree with you. The Department of Justice is not as responsive in a timely way as it should be. I continue to push on that matter, and I hope we all will. Both sides of the table share that. Yeah. And finally, thanks for channeling the memory of Paul Simon with your bow tie this morning. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard this issue raised a number of times, of course, by Senator Grassley and our chairman. Senator Whitehouse has raised it. It seems to me that sometimes when people act like they don't care, you just have to believe them. What's our next step to get the information that we're entitled to?
Well, thank you. I have had a meeting this last week with Lisa Monaco, and this was raised, and she's assured me they're going to be more responsive. But we've heard that before. We've heard it many times, and Senator Whitehouse can go back in time even before this administration, where the department is just unresponsive. So I'm with you on this. And,
what's the next step we could take?
Well, let's sit down and have a private conversation about the next step. And I hope it's on a bipartisan basis. It should be.
Well, I think it should be, but it seems to me that whether we do it privately or publicly, it's time to do that, because this has been going on for a while, frankly, under both administrations, and or at least the last two administrations. And it seems to me I'd rather have that discussion publicly, but I'm certainly willing to do it privately. But I think it's time to accept reality, look it in the eye, and accept it.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cornyn.
Mr. Chairman, let me just join you and Senator Grassley, Senator Kennedy, and others in expressing my concerns about the Department of Justice not showing up at hearings where they have relevant testimony to offer. They've done that on numerous occasions. Just given the Heisman to the committee, I think the only reason the Department of Justice doesn't answer our letters and the FBI is because we let them get away with it. I think there are tools potentially available to us to make that decision an uncomfortable one for them. And I, for one, would join you and Senator Grassley and any other colleague who would hold their feet to the fire. And I agree with you, this is not a partisan issue, because we've seen the same sort of contempt or disdain for our oversight responsibilities from Republican and Democratic administrations. I would note that the January the 6th Commission has exercised at least one tool potentially available, and that is a contempt of Congress citation. And I think that there are tools available to us, and I would join with you and others in having a conversation privately first to try to figure out what makes the most sense, what's likely to be the most successful. But I agree with Senator Kennedy that we ought to, at some point, make this public so that everybody understands what we're doing. The final thing I would say is one of the things I'm proudest of on this committee is the work I've done with Senator Leahy on the Freedom of Information Act. The public does have a right to know, and Congress has a right to conduct oversight. And this idea that departments of the federal government in the executive branch can just simply ignore us is just not acceptable. And so I want to be a part of whatever it is that gets us to a solution here. But I suggest there are a number of tools available to us, and I'm for using them all.
Thanks, Senator Cornyn.
Would the senator yield? May I ask the senator a
Well, I
question?
wanted
I
to
have Senator Whitehouse seeking recognition too, but Senator Kennedy, would you like to follow
I
up?
just wanted to ask Senator Corner a question. What different tools, Senator, are available to us?
Well, I noticed that, of course, these agencies depend upon the Congress for funding. That's a rather blunt instrument, but available. And I would just note, as I said, that the January the 6th Commission has already issued subpoenas to witnesses who refuse to show up, and they've been criminal contempt charges filed against some of them. And we don't know how that's all going to get sorted out based on claims of privilege and the like. Obviously, the courts are going to finally decide that. But I think there are tools like that, and I'm not suggesting any specific one at this point. I'm just saying that being ignored is not acceptable.
May I suggest, Senator Leahy and Senator Whitehouse have asked for recognition. Let's ask the staff on both sides to do a listing of pending requests for information from the Department of Justice and see what we have before us. I think it's going to be a lengthy list. And then let's talk about letting them know we're serious again, which I've done, and we'll be happy to do again, but
Well,
apparently
I know you have, Mr. Chairman.
with little success.
You've done everything you can.
So the next question is, if they are going to continue to ignore us or stonewall us, that we will consider measures that can be taken by the committee on a bipartisan basis.
Could we ask staff also to put together, in addition to a list of instances where they have ignored us, our possible options that we could take?
Fair enough. Senator Leahy, then Senator Whitehouse, and I'd like to wrap up so we can be on the floor and leave for the Dole ceremony.
I just appreciate what Senator Cornyn said. He and I have worked in both Republican and Democratic administrations on FOIA, and the way we've been successful in getting the legislation through is we said it doesn't make any difference whether it's a Republican or a Democratic administration. The public has a right to know. And I've been very, very proud to work with the senior senator from Texas, and will continue to right to the time I leave. In your discussions with this, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that possibly those on the Appropriations Committee might have some inducements for some of these. I just mentioned that as a member of that committee. And
Well, you're certainly more than a member.
thank you.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very glad that we're having this conversation, and I just wanted to share some of the experiences that I have had dealing with the Department of Justice and the FBI, trying to get information. And there are a whole bunch of techniques that they use to stop us. One is the Office of Legal Counsel, OLC. For instance, coming up with the idea that the Department of Justice doesn't have to answer any questions of members of the Judiciary Committee, except the chair. Thankfully, when Senator Grassley was chairman, he said that's a stupid idea, and I don't accept it, and we're going to expect answers to all of our questions. But that was the position that the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel took. They have also asserted to me that answers to our questions have to go through some complicated interagency process. And of course, they managed to have the interagency process last long enough that it gets through a Congress. And then they take the position that despite the fact that we're still here and the question is still pending, the end of a Congress erases the board of all our questions, and we have to go back and ask them all over again and restart the clock and presumably restart the interagency process. I've been told that OMB has to sign off on some of this stuff, and as we know, the White House exerts political control over OMB. There's no reason whatsoever for an answer from a senator, answer to a question from a senator by DOJ to have to be routed through OMB, but they have told me that. They have repeatedly refused to answer our questions because of FOIA exemptions, and as Chairman Grassley just pointed out, FOIA does not pertain to the relationship between this committee and the Department of Justice. But I recently wrote a brief in a FOIA case making the argument that we had a stake in this because the department so regularly treats us as a simple FOIA applicant and won't answer questions. And the last, of course, is the wild views of executive privilege that were taken during the last administration, sometimes just stamping a document constitutional privilege and saying we're not going to answer, which is difficult because in the process between the executive and legislative branches, the Department of Justice is supposed to intermediate that process of accommodation that courts have described. And when the Department of Justice itself is not intermediating, but is simply doing the bidding of the worst instincts of the executive branch, then the whole so-called accommodation process completely blows up. So over and over and over again, we have these situations in which these supposed rules are put in the way of our oversight that have no real basis. And the thing that's most frustrating about all this, Mr. Chairman, is that when it suits the interests of the department and when it suits the interests of the president, none of this seems to be a problem. I ask my colleagues, you can imagine situations in which you'd be just as irritated, but while I couldn't get basic policy documents, clearly FOIA-able basic policy documents from the FBI for years. It got so bad that Senator Graham, Chairman Graham, actually called in the DAG to meet with me to say, what the hell is going on? Why aren't you answering these? At that same time, there was an open sluice gate, a complete fast lane for anything that Republicans on this committee wanted related to Crossfire Hurricane. Side by side, you had an FBI traffic jam blocking all answers to my questions, while right over there was the Speedway fast lane for everything that had to do with Crossfire Hurricane. So the selective nature of the application of these phony baloney excuses for not complying with us is just as frustrating and I think perhaps even more telling than the phony baloney nature of the excuses. So yes, Chairman, thank you for your work and leadership to get us there, and I hope that we can solve this problem in a way that has a lasting solution.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on Ms. Dawn Eisen's nomination to serve as U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan? If not, on favorably reporting the nomination of Dawn Eisen to be U.S. Attorney, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. We now turn to S26.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
That'd
Hawley.
be recorded as a no.
Senator Hawley will be recorded as no on Ms. Eisen. Senator Blackburn will be recorded as no. Senator Cruz will be recorded as no. Any others? That nomination will be favorably reported to the floor with the exceptions I noted. We now turn to S2614, the Open Courts Act of 2021, which I have already described. I'll now call up the manager's amendment, SIL 21D37. Any objection to the adoption of the manager's amendment? Without objection to manager's amendments adopted, does any senator seek recognition to speak or offer an amendment?
Mr. Chairman, can I just be offered added as a co-sponsor?
Senator Booker as co-sponsor, Senator Blumenthal as co-sponsor, Senator Coons as co-sponsor, Leahy as co-sponsor, Padilla, Ossoff, Kennedy, Hirono.
Thank you.
Say a brief word.
And Senator Feinstein. Good. Senator Hawley, you seeking recognition?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, I just wanted to say that I'm proud to support this bill and that it's long past time to make PACER truly free. These are public court records, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, but the thing about them is we don't treat them like the contents of a public library. If you want to get a hold of a public court record, you have to pay for it, and I thought the chairman's description of the search functions on PACER as torturous is exactly accurate as someone who has had to use that search function. And I'm a lawyer. I mean, this is something I was supposed to be doing in my job. If you are a normal person who is trying to access these records, it's just about impossible, and then it's expensive. This bill would fix that. I'm proud to support it.
Thanks, Senator Hawley, for making this a genuine bipartisan